Alright, so here's my story. My name's Trey Taylor, and I've been married to my high school sweetheart Jody for 12 years now. We met when we were just kids, and I thought we'd have this perfect life, you know? I watched my dad screw up time and time again with his affairs, and I swore to myself I'd never be that guy. Never cheat. Never lie. Because I saw how much it tore my mom apart. Jody and I had the kind of love people write songs about. At least, that's what I thought. We've been through everything together, broke as hell in our 20s, building our lives from the ground up, and getting our first house together. It felt like we were unstoppable. But then one day, I got a call at work from some guy named Michael. Never heard of him before. He tells me that my wife, Jody, is having an affair. My heart stopped. I couldn't even process what he was saying at first. He said she was with some guy named Stan. Stan. The name didn't even sound real, like a name from a bad soap opera. I just sat there in complete shock, holding the phone, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. I didn't even ask Michael how he knew this stuff. Honestly, I was afraid to know. He said I should be aware, and that I had the right to know, and I hung up. I didn't confront Jody right away. I couldn't. My mind was spinning in circles. I knew what I wanted to do, walk up to her and demand answers. But I was paralyzed. I was furious. I was hurt. But I didn't want to destroy everything, not without knowing for sure what I was dealing with. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. Yeah, I went full spy mode on my wife. It felt dirty, but I just needed the truth, you know? I couldn't bear the thought of confronting her and being wrong, and I couldn't live with the doubt. I had to know. The investigator started tailing Jody. It felt like I was putting myself through a slow, torturous death. She had no idea I was doing this, and I couldn't bring myself to even look her in the eye. I'd come home, act normal, pretend everything was fine, but inside I was screaming. How could she do this? How could she betray me like that? I knew that if I confronted her too early, I might not get the full story. I didn't want to be some guy who overreacted. I wanted to be sure. But at the same time, every moment felt like a countdown. How long could I keep this up before everything exploded? Jody wasn't acting weird at home though. She was doing her usual thing, too busy to notice anything, I guess. And I was trying not to let my anger show. But it was so hard. The worst part? I was questioning myself. Was it my fault? Had I done something wrong? Did I miss something? Maybe this was karma for my dad's mistakes all those years ago. I needed answers. And I was about to get them, so I spent the next few days like a damn robot, just going through the motions. Wake up, go to work, come home, act normal. But inside, I was unraveling. I kept telling myself, don't jump to conclusions. Don't be that guy. But everything I thought I knew about Jody and our life together started to feel like a lie. I'd try to brush it off. I really did. I thought, maybe it's a mistake. Maybe Michael's wrong. But the more I thought about it, the more I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't being paranoid. I mean, how could I ignore what Michael said? How could I just pretend everything was fine? Every day, I was waiting for the investigator to get back to me. I knew he'd be tailing Jody and this Stan guy, but damn, every minute felt like an eternity. I couldn't even eat. I was skipping meals. I couldn't sleep, either. Every night I'd lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how it all went wrong. And then came the call. The investigator finally sent me the first set of photos. I almost dropped my phone when I saw them. There was Jody, standing outside some hotel, talking to Stan. The pictures weren't very clear at first, just blurry shots from a distance, but it didn't matter. I could tell it was her. And the guy? I couldn't see his face too well, but I could see enough to know they were close. Too close. I don't know how long I stared at those damn pictures. It felt like hours. I wanted to burn them, but I couldn't. I just stared, waiting for something to make sense. Was this really happening? Was this the woman I built my life with? The next day, the investigator sent me more. These were worse. Clearer shots. Jody was kissing Stan in a parking lot. I almost lost it. It wasn't just some misunderstanding anymore. It was real. I wasn't imagining things. This was happening. My mind was racing. I didn't know what to do. The anger inside me was like a storm. I wanted to confront her right then, but I couldn't. I wasn't ready to face her and risk losing everything we had. Not until I had more. I needed the truth in full. If I confronted her too early, I'd just look like a crazy person. So, I kept waiting. But God, the pain was unbearable. I'd come home, look at her, and try to pretend everything was fine. She had no idea that I knew. How was she able to look me in the eyes and act like nothing was happening? Didn't she feel guilty? Didn't she think about the life we'd built? The family we'd talked about having one day? Every little thing she did started to bug the hell out of me. The way she left her shoes by the door. The way she hummed when she made dinner. Things that used to be endearing suddenly felt fake. Like she was hiding something behind every smile. Every laugh. But I still kept quiet. I told myself, just wait. Get all the facts first. You're not going to confront her on half a story. It felt like I was playing this game, acting like everything was fine while my heart was breaking. And the worst part was that I couldn't talk to anyone about it. No friends. No family. No one. What could I say? How do you tell your friends that your wife is cheating on you with some random guy? I couldn't even say the words out loud. So, I did what I thought was the right thing to do. I kept my mouth shut and waited for the investigator to send me more. I needed everything to be clear, but every day was torture. Each night, I'd lie in bed, replaying the images in my mind, wondering how long she'd been seeing him. Was this a recent thing? Or had it been going on for months? All I knew was that I couldn't keep this secret anymore. I had to know the full truth. And I had to find a way to confront her, no more waiting. It felt like the weight of the world was pressing down on me. Those damn photos kept haunting me, Jody and Stan, laughing, kissing, being so damn comfortable with each other. Everything that was supposed to be stable in my life was crumbling in front of my eyes, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. The investigator kept sending me updates. The next set of photos was even worse. Jody and Stan, sitting in a car, parked in some isolated area. I could see their faces now, clear as day. She was touching his arm, leaning in close to him. Her eyes were all soft, like the way she used to look at me. And Stan, he didn't look like some random guy, he looked like someone who knew exactly what he was doing. A man who knew how to get under her skin. I couldn't handle it anymore. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I was so damn close to just confronting her, but part of me held back. I kept thinking, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm jumping to conclusions? But every new photo felt like a gut punch. I tried talking myself out of it. I thought, maybe I'd go to her calmly, ask her what's going on, and give her a chance to explain. But I knew deep down that wasn't going to happen. I knew this was bigger than a simple conversation. This was a betrayal. She had crossed a line, and I could feel it in every part of me. So one evening, after a particularly long day at work, I came home and found Jody in the kitchen, humming as she cooked dinner. The sound of her humming, the familiar way she moved around our kitchen, hit me harder than it ever had before. I couldn't look at her without thinking of the images, the lies, everything she'd been doing behind my back. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call her out right there, but something stopped me. Instead, I stood in the doorway, just watching her. She turned around, smiling when she saw me. That same smile she'd always given me, like she hadn't just shattered everything I believed in. "Hey Trey," she said. "How was work? How was work? How was work?" I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just nodded and gave some half-hearted response. "Good. Just tired." "Yeah, I get it," she said, her back still to me as she stirred the pot on the stove. "It's been a long week, huh?" I couldn't take it anymore. My mind was racing. My heart was pounding in my chest. I didn't know how much longer I could keep this up. But before I even knew what I was doing, I blurted out, "I know about you and Stan." Her back went stiff. The spoon in her hand stopped moving. Silence. I waited for her to turn around, but she didn't. She didn't even move. It felt like time had stopped. Finally, she spoke, her voice shaky, but trying to stay calm. "What are you talking about?" I couldn't believe it. She was going to lie. She was going to act like she didn't know what I was talking about. I wasn't going to let her. "I saw the pictures, Jody. I know everything." She turned around, her face pale now, all the color drained from her cheeks. For a split second, She looked genuinely shocked, like a deer caught in headlights. Then, the panic set in. Pictures? What pictures? Trey, what the hell are you? Don't lie to me, I cut her off, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. I know about Stan. I know what's been going on. You think I didn't notice? You think I wouldn't find out? Her mouth opened and closed like she was trying to find the right words, but nothing came out. She just stood there, eyes darting around like she didn't know what to say. I didn't want to believe it, I said, my voice quieter now, the pain creeping in. I really didn't. But you made me see it. You made me find out. You betrayed me, Jody. She finally spoke, but her words didn't hit me like they used to. Trey, I'm so sorry. It's not what you think. I couldn't believe her. She was apologizing. She was trying to make it sound like this wasn't as bad as it was. I could feel the rage building up inside me. I wanted to scream at her, but I just couldn't. I didn't know what to say anymore. Instead, I just asked, "How long, Jody? How long has this been going on?" She didn't answer right away. She looked at the floor, her shoulders slumped. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she whispered, "A few months. A few months." That's how long she had been lying to me. That's how long she had been betraying everything we built together. I couldn't take it. I turned and walked out of the room, my mind reeling. I wanted to shout. I wanted to hit something. But I didn't. I just needed space. I needed air. I needed something to make sense of all this. But nothing made sense anymore. I didn't go far. I just walked outside. The cold night air hit me like a slap in the face, but it wasn't enough to clear my head. Nothing was. I paced back and forth in the yard, my hands clenched into fists, trying to make sense of the mess I was in. My whole body was tense, like every muscle was wound up tight, ready to snap. I needed answers, but nothing Jody said made sense. A few months. That was the part that stung the most. I could handle a mistake, maybe even an affair that happened once, but months? This wasn't some brief lapse in judgment. She'd been lying to me, hiding it for so long, and for what? For who? I thought about Michael, the guy who called me, who told me everything. Why would he even get involved? How did he know? Was he a friend? A colleague? All of this was spinning around in my head, and I had no clue who to trust anymore. I tried to steady my breathing, forcing myself to calm down. I couldn't fall apart. Not yet. Not until I knew everything. But then the door opened, and I heard Jody's voice calling from the porch. "Trey, please, let's talk." I turned around, but I didn't walk back inside. I just stood there, my eyes locked on her, waiting for her to come to me. I wasn't going to make it easy for her. I wasn't going to let her pretend like everything was fine now that the truth was out. She stepped down the porch steps, her face pale, her hair messier than usual. She was trembling. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I never meant for it to get this far. You have to believe me." I didn't say anything at first. I just let her words hang in the air, heavy and suffocating. How could I believe her? After everything? She stepped closer, her voice softer now. "Trey, please talk to me. I never wanted to hurt you. I swear it just happened." I shook my head. "It just happened? You're telling me it just happened?" My voice was louder now, shaking with anger. "You've been sleeping with this guy for months, Jody. And now you want to tell me it just happened?" She flinched, her eyes welling up with tears. I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Trey. I messed up. I was stupid. But it wasn't about you. It was never about you." She paused, like she was searching for the right words, but they never came. "Stan. He was there for me when you weren't." That hit me like a punch in the stomach. What's that supposed to mean? I was right here, Jody. I've been here. I've always been here. My hands balled into fists at my sides. "So you just decided to throw all that away for some guy you barely know?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her face now. "No, Trey. It wasn't like that. I don't even know how it started. It was just, one thing led to another. And I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know how to tell you. I wanted to scream at her, but I couldn't. I was too tired. Too drained. It didn't even matter what she said. She was lying to my face, telling me it was a mistake, telling me it didn't mean anything. But how could it not? How could she sit there and act like I should just forgive her for this? How long, Jody? I asked, my voice low. How long were you planning to keep this from me? She hesitated again, looking down at the ground. I didn't want to hurt you. I kept thinking I could stop. That I could fix it. But I couldn't. And now I don't know what to do. I felt my heart sink, like someone had just knocked the wind out of me. You don't know what to do? I echoed, barely able to believe what I was hearing. You don't know? You've been lying to me for months, and now you don't know what to do. She started to sob, shaking her head. I don't want to lose you, Trey. Please. Please don't leave me. I couldn't do this anymore. The tears, the excuses, it was all too much. I needed space. I needed time to think, but I couldn't trust myself to stay calm anymore. I couldn't even look at her. I took a step back. I need some time to figure this out, Jody. I can't do this right now. She reached out, but I stepped back again. Please, she begged, her voice barely above a whisper. Don't go. Don't leave me. But I had to. I couldn't stay here, listening to her beg, hearing her cry. I needed to breathe. I needed to get away from her, away from the lies. I'm not leaving you, Jody. But I can't stay here like this, pretending everything's okay when it's not. With that, I turned and walked away, the sound of her sobs echoing in my ears as I left. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to get away. I had to clear my head. I had to think. But as I walked out of our house, the weight of everything hit me again. The love, the betrayal, the broken trust, it all felt like it was crashing down on me at once. I don't know how long I walked. Maybe an hour, maybe more. I was so caught up in my own head that I didn't pay attention to where I was going. My feet just carried me, one step after another, as my mind replayed every moment of the past few months. The little signs I ignored, the excuses she made, the weird little looks she gave me when I tried to have a conversation. I kept asking myself, how didn't I see it? It was too much. I ended up at a small park a couple of miles away from our house. I sat on a bench, just trying to breathe. The city lights flickered in the distance, but everything around me felt too quiet. I could hear my own heart pounding in my chest, like it was trying to break free from my ribcage. I pulled out my phone. I hadn't called anyone, told anyone, not yet. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to explain this to anyone, especially not my friends or family. The thought of telling them about Jody made everything seem even more real. And the thing is, I had always believed in our relationship. I had always thought we were solid. We had built our lives together, and now? Now, it felt like nothing more than a house of cards. One gust of wind, and it would all come crashing down. I opened my messages. Michael. The guy who blew the whole thing wide open. I wasn't sure what to say to him, though. He wasn't some friend of mine. I didn't even know why he called me in the first place. But he was the one who gave me the truth I didn't want to hear. I debated for a while, but then I finally typed out a message. What do you know about her and Stan? I sent it, staring at the screen, waiting for something. A response. An answer. Anything. As I waited, my mind wandered back to Jody. I could still hear her voice in my head, her words cutting through the silence. It wasn't about you. It wasn't about us. I could still feel the weight of those words in my gut. Like she was telling me that I wasn't enough. That something was wrong with me. I closed my eyes for a second, trying to stop my mind from racing. I needed a plan. I needed to figure out what to do next, but the truth was, I didn't know. I didn't know what was worth saving anymore. What if this was the end? What if the love we shared was gone, like some distant memory I couldn't reach? I hated that I was questioning everything. I hated that I was torn between the man I was before all this, trusting, believing, and the man I was becoming, full of doubt and anger. A vibration broke my thoughts. My phone. Michael had replied. I hesitated before opening the message. But when I finally did, my heart sank. I don't know everything, Trey. But I know she's been seeing Stan for at least a few months. She kept it quiet, told people they were just friends. But I saw them together. She was definitely hiding something. I felt the ground shift beneath me. That was it. That was the confirmation. She wasn't just making excuses. She had been lying. The friendship with Stan? That was the lie. But there was something about the message that bothered me. Michael said he didn't know everything. What did he know? Why didn't he tell me everything? I felt like I was drowning in unanswered questions. I stood up from the bench, my head spinning. I had to go back. I had to face her. I had to get the full truth, whether I was ready or not. As I walked back toward the house, the streets felt unfamiliar. My thoughts were a blur, just a mess of anger and hurt. I wasn't ready for what was coming next. But I couldn't wait any longer. When I got back home, the house felt colder than I remembered. There was something unsettling about the quiet. Normally, we'd have music playing or the sound of her voice in the kitchen, but now? It was like everything had been muted. Jody was sitting on the couch when I walked in, her head down, eyes puffy from crying. She didn't even look up when I entered, like she was waiting for me to say something, but unsure if she was ready to hear it. I stood there for a moment, just staring at her. I wanted to be mad, to be furious. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I was too drained. It felt like all the fight had been drained out of me over the past few days. "You're back," she said quietly, her voice shaky, like she wasn't sure what I was going to say next. I didn't answer at first. I just walked past her, going to the kitchen to grab a drink. My hands were shaking, my mind still reeling. I didn't know how to handle this. I didn't know if there was even a way to fix it. She followed me, standing in the doorway. "Trey, I know what you're thinking. I know I've messed up. I just don't know what to say to make it right." I turned around, looking at her, the woman I had loved for so long, the one I thought would always have my back. But now? I didn't recognize her. She wasn't the person I had built my life with. She was someone else, someone who had destroyed everything we had. "Why didn't you just tell me, Jody?" I finally said, my voice low. "Why didn't you just tell me the truth from the start? Why hide it? Why let it go on for months like this?" She swallowed hard, her eyes filled with regret. "I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to lose you. And I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know how to fix it. So I just kept pretending." That hit me. The pretending. She had been living this double life, lying to my face every day. How could she do that? How could she look me in the eye, act like everything was fine, while she was out with Stan, doing God knows what? "Did you love him?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. The words stung as they left my mouth, but I needed to hear her answer. Her face went pale, and she looked down, almost like she couldn't face me. "I don't know. I don't think I ever really loved him the way I love you. It was just, I don't know. I wasn't thinking straight." I scoffed, my frustration building again. "So, you weren't thinking straight? That's your excuse? You weren't thinking straight while you were sleeping with another man?" She flinched at the words, and for a moment, I thought she might break down again. But instead she stood there, biting her lip. "Trey, I made a huge mistake. And I'm so sorry. I don't know what else to say." It was like she was asking for forgiveness without really understanding the weight of what she had done. Sorry wasn't enough. I needed more than that. I needed the truth. I needed to understand why she did it, why she kept going back to Stan, why she let it go on for months. "I talked to Michael," I said, my voice sharp. "He told me everything." Her face went white. "What? You talked to Michael?" "Yeah, I did," I snapped. "He told me everything I needed to know about you and Stan. You're not getting out of this that easy, Jody. Not anymore." I saw the guilt flash in her eyes, and for the first time, I saw something that looked like real shame. Michael, he shouldn't have gotten involved. I didn't want anyone to know. I thought if I kept it quiet, it would go away. I was wrong. "Yeah, you were," I said, shaking my head. "You were wrong about everything. But you're right about one thing. You did think it would go away. And you thought I wouldn't find out. You thought you could hide it from me." She stood there for a long time, her head bowed. The silence between us felt suffocating. It was like we were both stuck in this moment, trapped in the mess she had made. "I don't know what to do anymore," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I love you, Trey. I really do. But I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know if I can fix this." The tears started again, falling freely now. But it didn't change anything. The damage was done. The trust was shattered. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said quietly, my own voice faltering. "I don't know if I can look at you the same way ever again." I turned away, not wanting to see her broken face anymore. I didn't know what I was feeling anymore. Anger, sadness, betrayal, all of it was mixing together into this one big ball of hurt that I couldn't untangle. I needed space. I needed time. But more than anything, I needed to think. "I'm going to stay at my brother's for a while," I said, not looking back at her. "I need to clear my head. I can't be here right now." I walked out of the kitchen, grabbed a bag, and headed for the door without another word. Behind me, I could hear her sobbing, but it didn't stop me. I couldn't stay. Not like this. I drove to my brother's house, the empty space in the passenger seat next to me a constant reminder of everything I was losing. The house I had shared with Jody now felt like a prison. I wasn't sure if I would ever go back. My brother's place was quiet when I got there. He wasn't home, and I didn't expect him to be. He had a way of letting me deal with my problems alone when I needed it, but always offering a place to crash when things got too heavy. I dropped my bag on the couch and just stood there for a minute, staring at the empty room. It felt too empty. Like the walls were closing in on me. I wanted to scream, but instead I sat down, buried my face in my hands, and tried to get my breathing under control. What the hell was I supposed to do now? I kept thinking about the things Jody said, the excuses she made. She was sorry, she was broken, she didn't know how to fix it. But none of that mattered. None of it changed the fact that she had betrayed me. She had lied. She had kept me in the dark for months, and the worst part? She didn't even know why it happened. She said she wasn't thinking straight, but how do you not think straight for that long? How do you let it get that far? I stared at the blank walls. I couldn't go back. Not now. Not with all of this hanging between us. But I still loved her. Or at least, I thought I did. The woman I loved wasn't the woman I saw in front of me a few hours ago. That person was gone, replaced by someone who didn't know how to fight for the relationship we had built. But I couldn't ignore the other part of me that felt like I was throwing away everything we had, everything we built together. Could I really walk away from all of that? I pulled out my phone again, needing to distract myself from the mess swirling in my head. My fingers hovered over Jody's name for a second. I thought about calling her, but what would I even say? How could I fix this? What do I do now? But then I saw a message from Michael. The one who started all of this. The guy who felt the need to drag me into this mess, even though he wasn't really a part of it. He had no right to intervene in my marriage, no matter what his intentions were. "Trey, I know you're angry, and I don't blame you. But I just wanted to make sure you had all the facts. Jody's not the person you think she is right now. She's not the woman you married. I'm sorry it ended up like this." The message hit me like a punch in the stomach. I read it twice, trying to make sense of it. She's not the person you think she is. That stung more than I wanted to admit. Because, in a way, that was true. I didn't even know who she was anymore. The woman I married, my best friend, my partner, the one I thought would always be there, was slipping through my fingers. And here I was, sitting in my brother's living room, alone. I didn't reply to Michael. I couldn't. His words didn't make me feel better. They just reminded me of how out of control everything felt. I was angry at him too for getting involved, but deep down, I knew he had no idea what he was really doing. He was just trying to help, in his own way, even if it was all messed up. I stared at the message one last time before turning my phone off. I needed silence. I needed to stop thinking about all of this for a little while. I collapsed onto the couch, staring up at the ceiling. It was late, but I couldn't sleep. Not now. My mind was racing in every direction. Should I go back to her? Should I confront her again? Could I even look her in the eyes after everything? A knock on the door broke the silence. I didn't move at first, not sure if I was hearing things. Another knock, louder this time. Reluctantly, I got up and went to the door, peeking through the peephole. It was Jody. Of course. I felt my stomach twist. What the hell was she doing here? Hadn't I made it clear I needed space? I hesitated, then opened the door, not sure what I was going to say. I was so damn tired of all the back and forth. I wanted answers, but I wasn't sure I wanted to hear anything more from her. She stood there, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. She wasn't the woman who had been so confident before, the one who thought she could get away with everything. This version of Jody looked lost. Broken. I needed to see you, she said, her voice trembling. I needed to talk to you. I stood there, not saying anything for a moment, just staring at her. I wasn't sure if I should let her in or tell her to leave. Everything in me screamed to run, to hide. But a small part of me, just a small part, wanted to hear what she had to say. I stepped aside, letting her in. She walked past me without saying another word. We both stood there in the living room, the silence between us heavy and suffocating. I couldn't look at her. I didn't want to. But I knew she wasn't going to leave until she said whatever it was she had to say. Finally, she broke the silence. I've been thinking, she started, and I don't know what to do anymore, Trey. I don't even know who I am right now. I turned to face her, trying to hold back the frustration that was building inside me. That makes two of us, I muttered. She flinched, like the words stung. And maybe they did. But I wasn't sure if I cared anymore. I don't know if I can fix this, she said quietly, her voice cracking. But I want to try. I need you to know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I felt the anger rise in me again. I wanted to scream at her, tell her how much she had destroyed, how much she had hurt me. But I just stood there, speechless. I didn't know if I could trust her anymore. I didn't know if I could ever go back to the way things were. But I knew one thing for sure, I was broken. And I didn't know how to fix myself, let alone our marriage. I couldn't handle it anymore. The more she talked, the more her words felt empty, like she was just trying to say what she thought I needed to hear. I'll do anything, Trey, she kept repeating. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't even close. You think you can just fix this with a few words? I asked, my voice cold. You can't. You've already broken everything. I don't even know who you are anymore. Her face crumpled, and I could see the tears building again, but I wasn't moved. Not anymore. I'd heard it all before. I know I messed up, she whispered. But I love you. I do. I can't lose you. The words hit me like they used to, but this time they felt hollow. I just shook my head, turning away from her. I don't know if I can do this, I said quietly, almost to myself. I need space. I need time. She stepped forward, but I held up my hand, stopping her. No. I'm not ready. Not yet. I need to figure out if this is something I can even fix. I could feel her hesitation, but she didn't argue. She just nodded and walked out, leaving me standing there, staring at the door as it closed behind her. I sank onto the couch, the weight of everything crashing down. I didn't know where to go from here. But I knew one thing for sure, I couldn't go back to how it was. The next few days felt like a fog I couldn't shake off. I didn't hear from Jody again, and honestly, part of me was relieved. I wasn't ready to face her, not yet. I couldn't. The silence between us was deafening, but it gave me the space I needed. I stayed at my brother's place, not knowing if I was running away or just trying to find something that made sense. My mind kept replaying everything, the way Jody had looked when she told me it was a mistake, the guilt in her eyes, and the hurt in mine. But even then, I couldn't bring myself to forgive her, and I wasn't sure I ever would. One evening, I got a call from her. I let it ring out. Then came a text, "I'm sorry. I just want you to be okay. I'm here when you're ready to talk." I didn't reply. Not then. I wasn't ready to say anything, let alone hear her excuses. Part of me wanted to throw my phone across the room, but another part of me, the part that still loved her, just stared at the screen. I spent that night thinking about the future, or rather, what could be a future without her. It was strange, the idea of moving on. Could I ever really let go of everything we'd shared? Could I forgive her enough to rebuild something, anything? I didn't have the answers. But for the first time in a while, I felt a tiny bit of peace. Maybe that was the start. Or maybe it was just the beginning of the end. Days passed, and the weight of it all settled into my bones. I couldn't keep running from this. I needed to decide, either I moved forward, or I let everything fall apart. One night, I texted Jody, "We need to talk." I didn't know what I was going to say when I saw her, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. She replied almost immediately, "I'll be there soon." When she arrived, she looked the same, but there was a distance between us now. The trust, the bond we had, was gone. I looked at her, and for a moment, I didn't know what to feel. But I said it anyway, I can't forgive you, Jody. Not right now. Maybe not ever. Her face fell, and I felt the finality of it. This wasn't just a fight. This was the end. I turned away, knowing there was no going back. The silence between us was suffocating. She stood there, eyes wide, like she didn't know what to do with the words I just gave her. She opened her mouth like she was going to say something, but nothing came out. I didn't look at her again. I couldn't. I was done. The weight of it all, the lies, the betrayal, the broken trust, had worn me down too much. I don't think I can do this anymore, I said, my voice hoarse, barely above a whisper. Jody's shoulders slumped. Please. Trey, don't. But I didn't want to hear it anymore. I couldn't. I'm sorry, I muttered, more to myself than to her. I need to let go. She didn't argue. She just stood there, tears in her eyes, as I walked past her, out the door. I didn't look back. I spent the next few weeks in a haze, moving through the motions of daily life, but feeling disconnected from it all. The apartment felt too big, too quiet. There were no more late-night talks or shared plans, no more soft smiles or the sound of her voice filling the space. I was alone. Completely. There were moments of anger, moments of sadness, and moments where I just didn't feel anything at all. I tried distracting myself, work, friends, anything, but nothing helped. The ache in my chest was constant, like I'd lost something I couldn't get back. One evening, as I sat on the couch, I got a message from Jody. I'm sorry. I'm still here if you ever want to talk. I didn't respond. I wasn't ready to hear her voice again, even through a text. Part of me wanted to reach out to make things right, but the other part, what was left of me, knew that nothing would ever be the same. I couldn't go back to who we were. I wasn't sure who I was anymore. A few more weeks passed. I stayed busy, focused on work, reconnected with old friends. It wasn't much, but it kept me going. The pain wasn't as sharp anymore, but it was still there, just underneath the surface. I hadn't heard from Jody in a while. Part of me expected her to reach out, to try to fix things, but the silence between us felt final. And honestly, I was starting to accept it. The life we built, the love we had, it was all a memory now, something that couldn't be repaired. One night, I sat on the porch, watching the sunset. I thought about everything, the good, the bad, the betrayal. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I felt lighter. Like I could breathe again. I wasn't over it. Not yet. But I knew it was time to move forward. I couldn't keep holding on to something that wasn't there anymore. It wasn't a sudden change. It wasn't a moment of clarity or some grand revelation. It was just time. Time passing, healing slowly without me even realizing it. One morning, I woke up and decided to take a walk. Something simple. I didn't have a plan, but I ended up at a coffee shop I used to go to with Jody. I sat down with my cup, the familiar taste bittersweet in my mouth. The memories hit me all at once, the conversations we had there, the laughter. But this time, there was no weight to it. Just a quiet acceptance of the past. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't filled with bitterness. I'd made peace with the fact that sometimes things end, and that's just life. And as I walked out of that coffee shop, I didn't look back. I wasn't ready to start over, but I was ready to move on. It's been a few months now. I've spent a lot of that time reflecting, not just on everything that happened with Jody, but on myself too. It's hard to admit, but I didn't realize how much of me I had given up in that relationship. I didn't realize how much I had allowed myself to fade into the background, to put her needs, her happiness, before my own. I loved her, I really did, but somewhere along the way, I stopped thinking about who I was, about what I wanted. The truth is, I've learned a lot from the pain. I've learned that I need to take care of myself first, that I need to know my worth, even if it means walking away from something that once felt like it was everything. The other day, I was sitting on the porch again, watching the sun set like I did before. But this time, something felt different. I wasn't weighed down by the memories, and I wasn't hanging on to what could have been. I was just there, present, taking in the moment. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was missing anything. I realized I'm stronger than I thought. Stronger than I gave myself credit for. I didn't fall apart when everything crumbled. I didn't let the pain consume me. I got up every day, even when I didn't want to. I kept moving forward, and now here I am. Jody reached out a few times after the silence settled. I didn't respond to her texts or calls. I knew she was still hurting, and I felt for her, I really did. But I also knew that I couldn't be the person to fix her. I couldn't carry that weight anymore. I think she understood, eventually. The messages stopped coming, and I realized I had let go, just like I needed to. I wasn't angry anymore, not at her. I wasn't even bitter. I felt sad, sure. I mourned the life we'd built, the future that was never going to happen. But I also started to realize that it wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something else. A new chapter. And now, I'm starting to see the world differently. I'm open to the idea that I might find love again, but I'm not rushing it. I'm not jumping into anything just because I'm lonely or scared. I'm content on my own for the first time in a long while. I still have moments, of course. Moments when the memories hit me out of nowhere, or when I remember the good parts of our time together. But those moments don't hurt like they used to. They're just memories now. And that's all they are. Just pieces of my past that helped shape who I am today. There's this feeling I have now, a sense of peace I didn't expect to find. I don't know if I'm completely healed, but I'm getting there. I'm learning to trust myself again, to trust that I can make the right decisions for me. I'm not the same person I was when this all started. I'm stronger. I'm wiser. And I'm okay. And maybe that's the real victory.